Looking for some inspiration? You've come to the right show. Step into your divine feminine energy with me as I spill the tea on leadership and life. Hi, I'm Tracy M., your host here on Brave Girls, and I've got your back, and no mean girls are allowed. I've been called the fairy godmother of storytelling, and my gift is to unearth people's stories, share them, and make the world a better place for all of us. So sit back, relax, and listen in as we send some more positive vibes out into the universe. Enjoy the show.
Kimberly Prescott, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show today. I would like you to tell folks a little bit about your origin story and like how you became who you are today in the world, just as sort of background and context. So I'll let you take it from here.
Yes. Well, first, thank you so much for having me as a guest. I'm very excited to be here. And it's interesting to be on the other side because I'm a podcaster too. So being on the other side, I feel surprisingly nervous. So my story coming in, I was born and raised in Augusta, Georgia, right? So I grew up in the 80s and my parents divorced. My mother had mental illness, but she decided to send me to private school. And we lived in Section 8 housing, but she used the child support my dad paid to send me to private school. In the 80s, being poor and going to private school, not fun, right? And I was the only Black person in my class for many years. And I didn't like being in that school. I didn't want to be there. And my mom told me, don't worry about what's happening now. Take everything you can get from this experience because they can't take that from you. At 7 and 8 years old, you cannot appreciate that at all, okay? But going into the world and going to college and being in spaces where a lot of times I either was the only Black person or one of few Black people, being able to move in those spaces and having been in those spaces from a very young age did not feel unnatural or overwhelming to me. And so I really started to appreciate that experience, even though in the moment I didn't, right? And so I think that that's really what helped me to become who I am is the sacrifice that my mom made, but also the fact that my mom made me push through that tough situation and never let me run away from it, which has really helped me in building my business because you got to push through every day when you run a business.
Yeah. And I just want to give you a shout out. You're 10 years in and you have truly become the president at Prescott HR, where you are the CEO of leading that organization with your clients. So maybe you can just kind of tell us a little bit about your journey to get to being a 10-year entrepreneur with a thriving practice basically. And you can maybe even explain to the listeners kind of like the services that your firm provides.
Yeah. So we're an outsourced human resources firm, which a lot of people don't know what that means. So we're not a staffing company, and we also really aren't a consulting firm. What we are is we are the HR department for small to mid-sized businesses. So they don't need a full-time HR person. They hire us. We do everything an in-house HR person would do, but on a fractional basis. And the word fractional has become very popular. So we are fractional HR managers, basically. So that's what we do. The journey, I will say this, it wasn't on purpose that I became this business owner. And I think that there are many people who either have a really glamorous story or people who have a super unsexy story. My version is the unsexy version. I quit my job on a phone call. Yeah, I was working for someone that I didn't align with them. And I was probably about 45 days in. So it was a really quick decision. And I was on the call, I quit my job, and I said to myself, oh my goodness, I gotta call my husband and tell him I quit my job. So let me come up with a quick plan. So my quick plan, I was literally in the parking lot of a restaurant getting ready to go into a meeting when this happened. And I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to find a few part-time HR jobs, piece them together. Because at this point, I had come out of corporate, gone to this job. I was like, I don't want a job. I don't want to do this. It doesn't work for me. So I found a couple of part-time gigs, piece them together, and replace my income, and I'll be fine, right? Told my husband, he's like, fine, you have 6 months to make this work, but you got to go back to work, right? I'm like, okay. So, so I will say that I did have that, and everyone doesn't have that. So I did have that. Fortunately, I had some people that allowed me to partner with them and do some things. And then over time, I started to build my own client base and was able to do it on my own. I did not want to own a company. I had an executive coach that told me, "Do you want to do this forever?" And I was like, "What do you mean do this forever?" Right? He's like, eat what you catch. And I really hadn't thought about it. I was just happy with what I thought was freedom in not working for someone else. But really, I still had a job, right? It just wasn't clocking in somewhere every day. So I thought about that. And then I decided to bring people onto my team, which I really was worried about. I didn't know how I was going to do that. And I told him, I was like, well, people are going to think Prescott HR, they want Prescott, right? And he said, when you think about Apple, who do you think about? I was like, you think about Steve Jobs. And he said, Steve Jobs is dead. So if he can represent that company and be the face of that company, somebody else can be the face of your company. It's possible. And I said, you know what? I got it. So I started bringing people onto my team and became the president. Initially, we were all working side by side, but then I started to realize if I really want this to be something other than me working in the trenches every day and being an owner operator, I've got to elevate me and create some things in this business to really make it a business. And so about 5 years ago is really when I started doing that in a meaningful way. So that's how I became the president. I had another executive coach, and I told her, I was like, I had senior consultant, managing consultant on my email signature for years. And she was like, you are the president of this company. You need to feel like you're the president of this company. And now I feel like the president. I did not always feel like the president.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of times in our life, we make decisions and we have to make a pivot. And the fact that you were blessed to have, but at the same time, your husband gave you a 6-month deadline. So it wasn't like, oh, you can just go and lollygag and have whoever you want and paste together all these part-time things. But I love the evolution of even your mindset, and how you've got these people that are kind of dropping gems in, like, is this what you really want? And like, have you thought about this? And have you really adopted that mindset to really truly have a business that you have scaled, and you've got leverage and you've got systems and processes and people in place that you can then do what the role is that you have now stepped into. Tell us a little bit more about the mindset that you have today as that leader and where you're focusing your time and attention, as that, you're not a solopreneur anymore. You have a team, you've got people you got to pay, you got clients you got to succeed with, you got to be the rainmaker, bringing in all that work that will sustain the business, grow the business. So tell me a little bit about your mindset right now.
Well, one of my, I guess, the corporate job that really opened the world to me around what being in a business, what a business should look like, is when I worked at Allegis Group. So Allegis Group, founded by Steve Bisciotti, he founded it with some partners in the basement of a townhouse, right? And now he owns the Ravens. They tell that story internally a lot when you work at Allegis Group, right? And so, and they help you to understand what it means to build a team, to make a team, and to create replicable systems that work in an office in Seattle, work in an office in Knoxville. Go to any office in Allegis Group, you feel like you're in the same place, you know? So when I decided to start my business and make it a business, right? I was like, okay, I'm going to take some of those things. And the books that they would tell us to read at the time didn't really make sense to me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to read it because they're using these words. I want to use them too. But I went back and revisited Good to Great, right? And I went back and revisited Built to Last. And it really started to make sense to me because one of the principles in Good to Great that really I live by and I preach it to my team all the time is the hedgehog concept. We don't have to be all things to all people. Yes, we could do recruiting. Yes, we could do training and this design, but we're not the best in the world at it. We're best in the world at this, right? And so those are some of the things that have really helped me to help my team understand what we need to do and where they need to focus so that I can now go out and be the face of the company. And I also had to learn how to sell. I'm an HR practitioner. I didn't sell. I actually thought the word sales was a bad word. I didn't want to do it. And,
Right.
now I realize that I don't sell. I solve problems, right? And so that's how I look at it. And so I spend my time being in places where I help people solve problems collectively. So whether it's sitting on a board, whether it's being on a chamber committee, whether it's, being in a group of HR professionals where we are, presenting programming to other HR professionals, that's where I spend my time because I find that giving back makes me feel good, but it also helps people to see that I'm a subject matter expert in the thing that I'm talking about in where I am. And then they will come to you and look, oh, well, I have this, or I know someone who owns a business that has that this is happening, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's really been how I have found that I could get myself out there, spend my time doing things that quite honestly I enjoy. Some people could call it sales, right? It is, I do have to bring in business and I have sales goals. But the way that I've chosen to do it is in a way that doesn't feel difficult. And I feel good because I'm giving back. I'm doing good work to help support even other business owners, to be quite honest, in my work with the chamber.
100%. Yeah. And I look at you as somebody in the community. You're a pillar in the community. You are that matter expert, but also you have curated your personal brand that comes across as very authentic to like this is who you are in the world, unapologetically bold, you know, like you're just like it's I don't want to say it's like over curated, but it's very polished and it does lend itself to the credibility factor that you have. I know I have worked as a sort of a support person to HR, and I tell all my HR friends, I'm like, if you don't know KP, I'm like, I don't know where you've been. Like whether they're in like an inside of an organization looking to get out of the organization, I'm like, you really need to establish a relationship because you've figured, like in my mind as an outsider looking in, you have figured out so much that I'm not surprised you're in business 10 years. I'm not surprised that you're out and about and you're solving these problems. So people naturally are drawn to you because of your genuine, authentic, like way about you. And I think that speaks volumes about the intention that you've put behind kind of everything that you do, right? Which is so important because how you do anything is how you do everything. And so I believe in that. And so I look at people and I'm like, oh, she's on her game. If she doesn't know it, she'll help me find the right person, right?
Yeah. It's interesting because I didn't always feel that way. And part of it goes back to how I felt when I was, in elementary school and middle school. I really didn't have a place. I didn't know who I was. And then I got into corporate. It was very similar. And I remember, several times in, one of my corporate roles that people said, well, you're just intimidating. People are intimidated by you. And I really didn't know what to do with that. I'm like, okay, well, give me something actionable. What can I do differently? And I had a person that told me, well, the people on my team, they don't really like being in meetings with you because they always feel like they have to bring their A game. In that moment, my response was like, okay, well, A, that's what everybody should do. But B, I don't have the luxury of doing anything but always bringing my A. I have to. And so my husband, who, by the way, has never been in corporate before, he's in transportation. He's always been in transportation. He has a CDL and has owned dump trucks and stuff like that. Never been in corporate. So he doesn't understand corporate politics, which is a whole different world, right? And so I would talk to him about it. And I was like, they just keep saying I'm intimidated. I don't know what this means, right? And so my husband, who is not always the most intuitive person in the world, right? Came home one day, he brought me a Dale Earnhardt. And I was like, okay, I don't do NASCAR. What is this? And he said, just look at it. On this side, it says the Intimidator. He was like, that's what Dale Earnhardt was called, the Intimidator. He was
Hmm,
like, if you're going to be intimidating, then just own it. That hat is right there.
I
I've had
love
that hat for
that.
like 15 years, right? It's been everywhere with me since then. And I remember when I was doing my branding exercise for branding the business, the firm came back to me after a whole bunch of things, and the very first card that I saw, it said unintimidated HR. I was like, done. I don't need to see anything else. Done. Intimidated HR is the tagline. And really, that's how we do our work. That's how I show up when I'm out, is unintimidated. At the end of the day, I'm going to tell you what you need to know, right? Not what you
Mhm.
want to hear. I'm going
Yep.
to challenge the status quo. I'm going to say sometimes the things that other people are thinking and they don't want to say. You've been in meetings with me. I'll start a sentence and say, well, unpopular opinion.
Right. Right.
Because I just feel like if we don't say the things that we need to say, if we don't ask the questions that we need to ask, and if we don't turn over the stones that need to be turned over, we don't get to the best solutions. And I feel like as leaders in the community, leaders in business, we need to get to the best solutions. And sometimes that involves having those conversations. But if we have mutual respect for each other, when we leave that room, it's okay. If we're respectful in those moments, it's okay. It's okay to disagree, right? And so that's kind of how I have, when you say curated a brand, really, it's been with me the whole time. But it was really in that moment when my husband was like, just own it. That I was like, you
Hmm.
know what? That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and I would say that when I think about you, I do think that you're comfortable putting people in an uncomfortable position, but you do it with such grace and skill that most people don't. They shy away from that, but that's like your gift, right? Because you can do it in a way where it's respectful of the people you're interacting with. I truly believe that you have this gift where you do just own it and you're like, time out, let's talk about this, right? And I got to believe that that's a big value add for your clients, that they need that, especially if they're a small business owner and they're bringing you guys in as their HR department. And some of the best HR people are the ones that can navigate that and navigate the people that are the stakeholders in that conversation in a way that they walk out of the room with a solution, don't feel disrespected, their voices are heard. And so I truly believe that that's one of your gifts, KP.
I definitely appreciate it. I will say though that it was something that I had to work on. Out early in my career, I was an unpolished diamond, and so I have since.
Well, I think corporate though doesn't most corporations that I've been in, most organizations, large ones that I've been in, that is not like that's not going to get you very far, right? And that's where all the politics and the dodging and the weaving and the like figuring about your energy and all that just drains people. It drains me. Because I'm like you, I see it. It's just how do I go about making people understand that we need to get this out on the table in a way that's productive? Right. And so, when you think about what you're here to do in this lifetime, sort of your soul's purpose and mission, kind of, and as you've kind of matured and grown as an individual, as a professional, as a mother, as a wife, all the things, as a boss, like what do you think about, or how do you characterize that? I'm always curious about that.
Yeah, you had asked me this question 15 years ago, it would have been very different. But I have a 15-year-old daughter, and I
Hmm.
think that my life mission is to help her hone her superpowers. I tell her all the time, I want you to use your superpowers for good and not for evil, right?
Hmm.
And to help quite honestly, give her the guidance and the feedback in a safe place that I wish that I had. Like
Hmm.
if I had gotten that feedback and got that direction earlier, I really don't know where I would be. I could be anywhere, right?
Right. Right.
And so I want her to have that. And I tell her often, this is a safe place. I want you to make these mistakes here. I want you to get that feedback from me because I care, or your dad because we care. You get out here into the world, people may not give you that feedback. It may not be constructive. You may miss out on opportunities that you never even knew you could have had. And so I feel like my life's mission is to help her learn before it impacts her outside of, us, right? Um,
Yeah.
I want her to be the best version of her that she.
Right, right. Well, it's so funny because one of the other questions was, what's your advice to your younger self based on your lived experience? And it sounds like that's what yours would have been. Just be the best version of yourself, right? Own whatever the good, the
Yeah.
bad, the ugly. It's just, I call it the stew of you, right? It's like
Yeah.
we all have like a shadow side, but we all have like a superpower. And some people figure it out and some people don't. Like I did strength finders, and my number one is strategic, my number two is connector. And I feel like that's my superpower. I can think strategically and big picture and long term, but I'm also like always on the lookout for who can I introduce either a person to or an idea or concept to, and I get so much joy out of that and so much energy. And I always say to myself, how can I make money doing this? Because I feel like that's my superpower. And how can I lean into it? And I feel like this podcast, in a lot of ways, gives me that because I find people like you and I'm like, oh, the world needs to know this person's story. They need to hear, how other people, because we're all human, right? We're going to have our ups, we're going to have our downs, we're going to have guidance and coaches and mentors and maybe not have them. And so like I feel the same as you. I didn't really have, I had to kind of figure it all out and get uncomfortable and have things happen. And I'm like, wait, I created that situation, right? And we don't even realize it because we don't have sort of somebody going, you just like giving you that safe space, right? And that like it's okay to mess up here, right? Like, but we're going to tell you kind of maybe how you could have handled it different. So I love all of this. And maybe some of that is what your business is doing too, creating safe spaces for both the employees and the business owners, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, of course, I mean, I want everyone on my team. Even before the pandemic, we were always remote. It was just important to me that people had the flexibility because when people are able to do what they want to do the way they want to do it, they do better work, right? So we've always been remote, even again before the pandemic. So I want that for them. Once I decided that I was going to bring people onto my team, it was important to me that, when we did add benefits, that those benefits met everyone's needs. Like, I take medication. My daughter takes medication. I didn't want prescription to be included in the deductible. Like, I was very intentional about the decisions that I made. And then for
Hmm.
our clients, we try to tell them all the time. I joke with prospects when I'm having a conversation with them. I'm like, we'll do an HR practices review, and then we'll give you a report of your areas of opportunity. It's not what you're doing, it's an area of opportunity. And then I joke because I'm a Seinfeld fan. I'm like, it's almost like, I'm not going to say your baby's ugly. I'm going to say your baby's breathtaking, right?
I love it.
So yes, we want it to be a safe space because none of us get it all right. And if we did, we wouldn't need all of the other supports that are available to us. So we want people to feel like it's okay. And it's okay if today you're like, I'm going to operate in a darker shade of gray than you probably want me to, but
Hmm.
eventually we'll get to the point where we're getting into the lighter shades of gray. And that's fine because every business has its own journey that they have to go. And we're not just, this is what the law says. HR people who do that for me are stressful. Like, listen, people
Right,
have to make their own decisions. Yes,
right.
if there was a best answer, this is the answer. But sometimes it's a spectrum of good, better, best. And what can I do today?
Percent. So let's pivot a little bit to HR and cocktails. I love the title. I'm like, wait, what? HR and cocktails? That doesn't seem like it goes together, but you've been a podcaster for quite some time now, 45, 46, I don't know, on your way to 100 episodes. What was kind of the inspiration behind that? What's kind of like what are you trying to amplify out into the world?
Yeah, so the inspiration was I would joke around with another HR consulting business owner. We were like, oh man, we should sit down and tell stories about what happens in HR, and we need to drink because HR is wild, right? And so ultimately, I decided I was going to turn that into something. And the purpose of it really is twofold. It's A, to help people understand the full breadth of what HR is. I think that sometimes people think it's just hiring and firing and, and it's so much more. So when you look at the various topics that we cover, I think a lot of times people are like, oh, wow, I didn't realize HR touched all these things. Well, yes, we do, right? So what's that? But also it's to help people understand, listen, HR is not the fun police. We're not here to just stomp out all your happiness in the organization. And that's how people kind of treat us sometimes. I'm like,
Hmm.
I've never worn a seasonal sweater in my life. Like, I'm not that HR person, right? And
Hmm.
so helping executives to realize you can take your HR person when you all go to, have a drink or bourbon club or whatever it might be, because a lot of times you leave HR out and you think, well, HR doesn't want to be a part of that. They shouldn't be here or, whatever. No, if we're part of the leadership team, the executive team, and the decisions get made at the bar, invite me, please.
Hmm. Yeah, I always laugh because my dad, he's old school. He'd say, like whenever I'd be working with HR, he'd say, "Do you mean personnel?" I'm like, "No, Dad, it's not
Yeah,
personnel. It's broader than that." Like back in the day, it was like where you turned your timesheet in and you got your paycheck, right? And so I'm like, it's so much more than that. It's so much more than that. So I always laugh when somebody's like, "Oh, you're working with personnel." I'm like, "Okay, what decade did you work in?" Because it hasn't been called that in a really long time.
yeah, I think we let that go in the 80s.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. But he retired in the late 80s, so that's about right.
that's right. Hi, my
Um,
friend.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So what's next for you? Like when you're contemplating your moves, right? Like you
Yeah.
you hit this major milestone in sort of ownership and entrepreneurship, sort of like what's your next bold move that you are kind of got in locked in the target?
Yeah, I mean, right now the focus is growing the business for value, right? I mean, I think
Correct.
as any business owner, you think about what's my exit.
Yep.
And so thinking about what's my exit strategy, is it merging with another firm? Is it selling? Is it, me growing a leader internally to run it and then I, step aside? I don't know. But my
Hmm.
next move is planning my exit.
Figure that out. Yeah, like
Yeah.
figure it out. Yeah. Yeah, well, it totally makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of like you've built it and they are coming,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so monetizing on all of that blood, sweat, and tears that has gone into it. And also like what you want out of life and as your daughter gets older and stuff like that, and what season of life you're going to be in. You know what I mean? But I think it's
Absolutely.
good. Yeah, like it's smart to contemplate that and really be thoughtful about it, just like you've been thoughtful about the 10-year build,
Yeah.
right?
I will tell you that whatever it looks like, whether it's merge, sell, or step aside, it involves cruising at least 6 months out of the year. I will
Oh
tell you.
my gosh, for you. I love that. Do you have a favorite cruising destination? Where?
Destination, not necessarily cruise line for sure. But we honestly, just because it's so much easier, we definitely do a lot more Caribbean cruises.
Yep.
We have done, Greece and other places, but it's just so
Hmm.
much easier to fly to, Fort Lauderdale or Miami and get on the ship, right? And
Correct.
Baltimore, as well, even though the ships are a little different at Baltimore.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely what it involves. Again, my daughter's 15, so I have at least 3 years until I can start to do a little bit more cruising, and then we want to get her out of college, and then it's really
Of
like, okay,
course.
what are we gonna do?
I love that for you. I love,
Yeah,
love, love that for you.
yeah.
So, my finale question is always, what's the bravest thing that you've done and how does it inspire you today?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's kind of, I feel like it's two things, and I feel like they tie together. The bravest thing that I've done is believed in myself to make this business work and not give up, right? Because there are a lot of days where you wake up and you're like, I really don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know why I'm doing this, and maybe I should just go get a job because I could get a job. And then really probably 2 hours later, like I literally I have been to Stanford Grill, ordered the chocolate ice cream thing and like a martini espresso martini and just cried and ate that. And then when I was done, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to give up my business. I'm good. I ate my calories. I drank my martini. I'm good. So that.
Love that.
I also think that, making the decision to be a parent, because it was very intentional to be a
Hmm.
parent, um, that drives me every day. I feel like every day I want to be the best version of me so that my daughter can see that she can do anything she wants to do. It doesn't matter what it is. There are no boundaries for her at all. And I want to provide her with the best runway possible so that she can just take off. So I feel like running this business gives her the opportunity to see that she can do whatever she wants to do and be whatever she wants to be. So to
Right.
me, those two things together.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the entrepreneurial journey is not for everyone. That's why a lot of businesses fail within the first 2 years. That's why a lot of people do go back and get a job. That's why also like different, like, like how you thought about like, oh, I'll just get a bunch of clients and part-time it and like rubber band and glue it together, right? But that drives you crazy because then you're just at everybody's beck and call. One of the things I did was I went and I worked for another person's business as a freelance consultant. That's pretty popular. And then I wasn't because I didn't feel like eating what I caught. I didn't like going. I was like you. I didn't really like. I felt like sales was icky. I did get to the point though where I felt like it was solving people's problems, which took me a while to get there. And I had a lot of success, but then I've just depending on what season of life I'm in, right now I'm in the caregiving season, caring for, my mother, her sister, my mother-in-law. I'm in a lot of anticipatory grief. I can't work 14 hours a day. Like I got a recruiter reached out to me and they wanted me to, it was a great job, but I was going to be on planes, trains, and automobiles. I was going to be working 14 hours a day. And I'm like, I kind of did that rodeo when I was 36. And like, I don't want to do that. Like I liked what you said about the flexibility, the freedom, the people doing the best work. I really wish a lot more corporations with the Jamie Dimon, I'm talking to you, like get on board with, the human centered design for work. And recognize, especially for women, that we have caregiving responsibilities, we have children, we have family issues that we have to deal with. Like we are running our houses and our homes and you know, that's sort of like the unpaid work that we're doing, every single one of us. And to be so restrictive to say your butt has to be in this chair for these hours in order for you to be productive and at work, I have a hard time with that. And especially after the pandemic, I was already working remote before the pandemic and I already knew Zooms and Teams. So it was like, okay, I'm glad the world woke up to like online working and collaboration. Like, thank you. I'm glad like that actually to me was one of the best things that came out of the pandemic is that people's were woken up to there's different ways to get things accomplished and done and still be productive and have people feel like they have some sense of I don't want to say control over their life, but in some ways that's what it is, right? Because that's all people really want.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, also the ability to do remote work, it opens you up to a different pool of talent. It opens you up to not just being restricted to the best HR firm in your state, but it allows you to meet me.
Right, right, right. Because you can do what you do. It's not just geographically based.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's all over the country. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm hoping I'm going to put all your information in the show notes, but do tell people where they can find you online. What's the best way to kind of connect up with you? And I'll share all the links in the show notes, but go ahead and tell people where to find you.
Sure. So you can reach me at www.prescotthr.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Kimberly Prescott. I love to connect with people. Shoot me a message. And if you shoot me a message and you say, hey, I'd love to connect with you for 15 minutes, I will have a Zoom meeting with anyone for 15 minutes. So you can reach out to me and we can definitely connect.
Yeah, I think that's great. And just for everybody on the call, KP is she's your girl. And so like you really need to, take her up on this, follow her. She puts out great content on LinkedIn. Her podcast comes out on the regular. And, I really think you're a thought leader in your space, whether you call yourself that or not, but as sort of somebody who's always specialized in sort of content creation and curation and stuff in my career. I see you, KP. I see you. And I see what you're putting out there. And I see your kind of contrarian points of view on things that I think the world needs. And I love that what you said, that you've always had to bring your A game, right? And a lot of people haven't. And therefore, I think because you always had to bring your A game, your standards are so, so high. And you bring your A game in any space you walk in any meeting I've been in with you, in any forum where I've seen you speak. And I think that the world needs somebody who is intimidating like you, because that to me is leadership. That is leadership.
Thank you so much. I definitely appreciate that. And I am glad that I'm able to appreciate that quality in myself now because I wasn't able to.
Yeah, you had to grow into it, right? Because I think it was presented to you in a negative way and it wasn't constructive the way that they brought it up and then just sort of dropped it on you. And it's like, what do you do with that, right? And it's unfortunate because I think that happens to a lot of people that, you're like, well, that's not the vibe I mean to, that's not your intention, right? And that says a lot about them and whatever their biases are and whatever their issues are that, strong women, and I'm a strong woman, sometimes that makes people uncomfortable, right? But we have to stand in it and we have to own it and we have to just be like, I am unapologetically me. I'm here on my own purpose and mission, to sort of wake people up. That's what I feel like my purpose is, and to be that thought leader around really telling people, go believe in yourself. There's tons of people that have had to do it, that have come before you. There's no reason why you can't do it. And, make up your mind. Yes, you're going to make some bad decisions. Yes, you're going to have to pivot. Like that's just life. But you have to make the best decision with the information that you have at the time and do what's right for you and your family at any point in time, whether it's leaving your job or getting out of a toxic situation where you're like being abused by somebody and you just, and I was talking to somebody yesterday, I was trying to coach them through and I said, what's your long game? I'm like, and then how long are you going to tolerate this? And what can you do while you're tolerating it that will get you to your long game? Like yes, you're being abused is what I said to her. I said, you're being abused. I said, but also know this, the person that's your supervisor shouldn't be a supervisor, first off. And so she's making every first line supervisor error that you could make. However, document that, build your case that this is what's been going on. It's, so that when and if you have an opportunity to point this out to the right person, you've got real live examples and it's not just you saying, I can't work for this person. So anyway, thank you so much. Yeah, it does happen a lot. I'm sure you see it with your clients and their employees and their contractors. I'm sure you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I wish you the best of luck in everything that you've got going on this year. And everybody knows who Kimberly Prescott is, and Prescott HR, and HR and Cocktails can be on their podcast, Listen, Live.
Absolutely. It's a short, bite-sized podcast, so you'll be able to get it done. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Tracy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. I hope you found a gem or two that will motivate you to change your mindset, pursue your dreams, and fulfill your soul's purpose. I believe that we can go farther and faster when we connect in the spirit of positivity and understand how we individually can serve humanity. The world needs more love, so keep shining, ladies. I can be found on my corner of the interwebs at tracym.com. And I'd love to connect on social. Just Google me and my SEO will tell you more about what I'm up to as I step into my purpose as a storyteller. I love you, brave girls. Now, it's time for you to step up your game and become the best possible version of you. I believe in you, and you've got this.